What's up, everyone? I am about to review a movie that I have wanted to see for many, many years, and finally got to because, well, I actually was able to find it. Like, this has been a movie that has been hard for me to find, that I've wanted to see since 2010 when it came out, and I finally got to. So, the movie I'm talking about, it's called Closed for the Season. Or alternatively, here's why it's been so hard for me to find. The movie is actually called Carnival of Fear. So that's the big thing that has made it hard for me to find, is that I've searched it as Closed for the Season and not Carnival of Fear. But when I searched Closed for the Season, because it is commonly known by that name, it came up as, oh, it's available on Tubi. So I was able to watch it, and, well, I've got my thoughts on it. So I will say that from a critical standpoint, like if I'm talking about it as a film, I recognize that this is not a good film. Like, you're talking about, like, like, it's got CGI that's so bad that it makes, that it makes Roller Coaster Tycoon look realistic in terms of how they resurrect the park. But as a theme park nerd, as an urban explorer that likes abandoned places, I freaking love this movie. And it's perfect considering that I'm going to be going to Joyland in a couple weeks. So that was my reason for wanting to watch an abandoned amusement park movie, is to get me in the spirit of the season of, it's about time that I'm going to be exploring an abandoned amusement park in just a couple weeks. So that's the backstory on my history with this film and how I have wanted to see it for years. So now let's talk about some of the stuff that actually happens in the film. So it's actually a more well thought out concept than I was expecting. Like, yeah, the effects are crappy, but it actually has some stuff that got me. Because, like, not in terms of scares, but just in terms of concepts, where it's like layers upon layers upon layers, and like, to be able to think about seeing an amusement park through various stages of time, especially an amusement park that's abandoned, it's like, that's something that is kind of a personal fantasy of mine. And the way they have the carny saying that, hey, the villain is how people stopped coming here, and people who took stuff, what do they think? Like, my reaction to that is, what do they think of someone who genuinely goes to appreciate the park, who's an actual industry insider who actually appreciates that kind of thing? What do these ghosts think if someone like me goes to visit the park? Serious question. Like, what are they thinking if I'm the one who turns up? Are they like, oh, it's okay, this kid actually appreciates amusement parks and is here to appreciate the rides and would ride if they could, so, you know what? Let's give them the best experience that we can. Like, that's sort of how I imagine all of the ghosts in Closed for the Season, or Carnival of Fear, whatever you want to call it. That's how I imagine they would react to if I showed up on their doorstep. Like, if these ghosts inhabited Joyland, let's say, I imagine that would probably be how they would react if they saw me there. Is, hey, this kid is actually into this kind of stuff. Let's give her a good time, basically. That sort of thing, which, like, I mean, that's a fantasy I have, is going to an abandoned amusement park and experiencing that sort of thing. So, like, I mean, as much as it's clearly a low-budget movie, it does give that sense of of wonder to me. And also, it shows parts of Chippewa Lake Park that I had seen a few pictures of, but had not seen that much of. Like, you get to see more of the caboose than you see in a lot of the urban exploring videos of Chippewa Lake Park. You get to see, obviously, there's the fun house, and that facade was built for the movie, but I know it was really in Chippewa Lake Park from seeing videos that I saw of the park, like when someone made a documentary about it. And, like, I mean, I'm just gonna say, this movie, it's definitely, like, I mean, I'd say it surpasses So Bad It's Good in terms of a must watch. Like, there's definitely reasons that this is a must watch if you're into the kind of things that I'm into, i.e., abandoned places and amusement parks, because this is two things in one, both those things in one. I'm just gonna say, it's too bad that someone didn't see this movie and be like, I'm gonna make this a cult classic. I'm gonna restore Chippewa Lake Park. Like, I mean, that would have been really cool if someone would have done that. I'm just saying. Like, just imagine if someone, if they would have, if someone would have basically seen that and, say, called up, let's say for argument's sake, Ashley Brishel, who restored Leap the Dips in the 90s, and we discussed the current situation with that, which I am worried about the future of that ride, but in the 90s, this guy Ashley Brishel restored it, and he was able to preserve like 70-80% of the wood that was in the structure and get it back to operating. So imagine if you would have called him to work on Big Dipper at Chippewa Lake Park before they ended up tearing it down. Or because, like, there was, most of the ride was still standing. It could have been done. I'm willing to bet it could have been done. It very, very much could have. But, I mean, I will say that it's very much a corny movie. It's obviously not the type of movie that you're going to watch for the plot, but it definitely gets you in the mood to, if you're about to explore an abandoned amusement park, it definitely gets you in that mood. As you can see, I am very much in that mood, and you know, I'm ready to go to Joyland in a couple weeks because of watching a movie about an abandoned amusement park. I'm gonna watch that Closed for Storm documentary that was also available on Tubi at some point this week because, hey, it's another abandoned amusement park movie to get me in the mood. But, like, I mean, the only real knock I have against it is it has some bad CGI. It's not scary, but I like the atmosphere that it goes for. There are some scenes where I will say viewer discretion advised. Like, there are some things that make me squirm and go, "Oh, that's a little uncomfortable," and not in the way a horror movie should. Like, there's a scene of sexual assault, which, like, I mean, that's really the one knock I have against the film, is that it has a scene of sexual assault, and I honestly think the film could have worked without showing that sort of thing happen. Like, it has a good idea of, hey, let's film at an abandoned amusement park. Let's make it so that, hey, it's the fantasy of let's revive the park, but also in this sort of twisted, abandoned way, which, like, I mean, I have fantasized about that sort of thing for years. So, like, I mean, while I recognize why the critics don't like this movie, I can't help but say I recommend watching Carnival of Fear / Closed for the Season, whatever you want to call it, whatever it's called on any streaming services you have. Like, I mean, it's called Carnival of Fear on Tubi. That's what I can say as far as ability to find it, and it's been years that it's taken for me to find this thing, but like I mean it's definitely a cool look at Chippewa Lake Park right before they started demolishing things, right before they took out the coaster, the hamburger factory. You see the wild mouse clearly featured, a BA Schiff wild mouse. You love to see that representation of a coaster model that basically does not exist anymore because like I mean until 2013 you had the one at Chippewa Lake Park, and you currently have the one at Eagles Park in Oklahoma, I believe, that's been abandoned since the 80s. So it's a model that's very rare. Like I mean you love to see it represented. Like you get an actual representation of it. Like, I will say that some of the deaths aren't the most realistic. The CGI is not great, but, like, I mean, if you're looking for something that's going to give you the experience of I want to see something about an abandoned amusement park, and I want to be given the fantasy of reviving it while also, like, I mean, it has the theme of cold reality, is what they call it, where like you keep seeing it change which version of reality they're in, and it's like, well, what's happening now is just a story. Like that's sort of a theme where it's like what's happening now is not going to be happening in the future, and it's just a story. But then at Chippewa Lake Park it's always happening. And something that I noticed, so the movie, it is canonically called Chippewa Lake Park in the movie. Like, they do canonically go by that. They do canonically include graffiti that was in the park, like the lyrics to Death of a Clown. They include that lyrics that was graffiti on the stage because it became so famous that it was there, they just included it. I am going to say, though, based off of dates that I was given that they say early in the movie, I suspect that the movie takes place in 1990 and not 2010. And here's why. They state that the park has been abandoned for 12 years, very clearly. In 2010, the people who are in the movie, they are not old enough to have gone to that park as kids. Like, they are not old enough to have gone there for several years, like have their first memory of going there as a 6-year-old, especially. Like, I mean, that would have meant that let's see, like let's say generously they went the last couple years, which based on what you see, it was a much bigger part of their childhoods. So let's say that that's saying they would have been 80, 90. They would have had to be 40 years old, and I'm like, no, they are not 40. They look to be mid-20s. That's what they were when it was filmed. Mid-20s to 30s is the ages that they were. They were not in their 40s. And that's if I'm being generous to, you want to say that they went there as kids, and they were teenagers when the park closed. So for them to say, oh, the park closed 12 years ago, for them to canonically get so much right about Chippewa Lake Park, like, hey, it operated for 100 years, and the name of the park, for them to get all that stuff right, for them to get that kind of stuff right, and then for them to say, oh, it's been abandoned for 12 years, that's them telling you that the movie takes place in 1990. That's what I hear from that. So, like, I mean, that adds an additional aura of mystery, but also, like, I mean, since there are various layers of reality, who says the layer of reality that they're in isn't in 1990 when the park very much would have been restorable, I guess, and you just have to use your imagination to say that the weeds are not as that all of the nature taking over the park is not to the level that it is. I don't know if maybe that's the case where it's just you have to pretend that it is not that far advanced in its decay because of all that. But like, I mean, it's like, I mean, I'm theorizing about Carnival of Evil. I'm theorizing about a low budget horror movie. Like, what am I doing that I'm theorizing about what year a low budget horror movie takes place in? But obviously, I'm going to say I actually think this movie is definitely worth watching. It like I've said, this movie, if it's good enough for me to start theorizing about it, then it's good enough for a theme park nerd who happens to like abandoned places to give it a chance, give it a watch, have some fun with it. It's like it's a fun time. Especially like it's a fun time to watch Carnival of Evil. As much as the critics might hate it, as much as it might only have a 3 out of 10 on IMDb, as much as that might be the case, as much as it might have a 6% on Rotten Tomatoes, as much as that might all be the case, it's a fun time if you're a theme park nerd and you like abandoned places. Like, I'm just gonna put it that way. So yep, I'm gonna give my recommendation for, if you're someone like me, give Closed for the Season / Carnival of Evil, whatever title it is on any streaming services you have, give it a watch, especially if it's about to be abandoned amusement park season for you, like it is for me, because I'm going to be going to Joyland in a couple weeks. It definitely gets you in the mood for the season if you're going to be doing that sort of thing. So that's going to do it for this video, where I am doing my review of Closed for the Season / Carnival of Evil. And yeah, I recommend watching it if you're someone like me who likes theme parks and abandoned places.